Maestra Patricia, it's so incredible to have you here and get to learn more about your journey as a teacher, as a leader, as a guide. And so I'd love if you could just share more with us about who you are and just what your journey has been.
So I come from a Nahua family, and Nahua is one of the groups that are part of the Uto-Aztecan big umbrella of groups. It is said that at least thousands of years ago, my Nahua people walked all the way from what is now Utah, or this area of Uto-Aztecan land, all the way to what is now Mexico City.
I guess I'd love to hear just a little bit more about what kinds of traditions, rituals, rites, initiations are common or are part of your community, and how are those alive today?
Community with thousands of years, as people with thousands of years of knowledge. There's obviously, we have rite of passages. The water is Chalchihuitlicue. It's an aspect of Mother Earth, and we offer the baby and we tell, this is your baby. Like I'm the mother, but you help me brought this baby, so this is your baby too. So please, and we're very careful with the baby. We talk to the person that is doing the ceremony talks to the baby and prays to Chalchihuitlicue, to the mother water, that she protects the baby, that she helps cleanse not only the body of the baby but the heart.
Maestra Patricia, it's so incredible to have you here and get to learn more about your journey as a teacher, as a leader, as a guide. And so I'd love if you could just share more with us about who you are and just what your journey has been.
Well, name is Tlazocamati, Nenotoca Patricia Chicoicoat, Neonitlaca Umpa Mexica-Tenochtitlan, Yeseni Chantinican Huchintlali. Tlazocamati, mil gracias. Thank you very much, Lotus. My name is Patricia. So my Nahuatl name is Chicoicoat. So it's two words. Chicoyi is 8 and Coat means serpent. So Coat the serpent is but has energy from the east. And the east in our tradition includes masculine energy. So I have a lot of masculine energy and I love my masculine energy. But again, that's my Nahuatl name, and that's part of my tradition. I love my name, Patricia. That was the name that my parents gave me with a lot of love. But for us, it's like we have to have like at least two different aspects, right? Like our Western aspect, in this case, would be Patricia, and then my Nahuatl aspect, which is Chicoicoat. My students call me Chicoicoat, most of them. My family calls me Patricia. Right, and I love that name. So my family is Nahua, so I come from a Nahua family, and Nahua is one of the groups that are part of the Uto-Aztecan big umbrella of groups. So Uto-Aztecan are located from a little bit, I would say, the eastern part of California, all the way to maybe New Mexico, maybe even farther. And of course, Utah, the state of Utah, I guess that's the birthplace of the Uto-Aztecan people. So Nahua people are one of those groups. And so it is said that at least thousands of years ago, my Nahua people walked all the way from what is now Utah, or this area of Uto-Aztecan land, all the way to what is now Mexico City. And so I come from a family of Nahua family, and they know about what is called temazcales. I don't know if you have heard. They are called here, well, the equivalent of temazcales are called here inipi in the Lakota tradition. There are these steam baths for healing, and about magueyes, so agaves, amaranth, huautli, and obviously corn, a lot of that tradition. And I was raised in a Nahua way, but in Spanish, due to colonization. So my grandparents went to school up to maybe I think 3rd grade, and then my parents also went to school more or less 3rd to 4th grade, and that was that. But unfortunately, they didn't teach Nahuatl in their school, unfortunately, because of colonization. So I realized that I was raised as a Nahua, but again in Spanish. And the reason why I know that was because when I was a little bit older, when I was pretty much in college, that's when I realized that not all Mexicans, because I come from Mexico, but not all Mexicans are the same. Because that's when I started relating or getting to know, Mexicans, white Mexicans. So when we would talk about, for instance, tortillas, all of us, like people like me, from the indigenous traditions, all of us, our grandmas or aunties or moms, they know how to make the tortillas by hand, corn tortillas by hand. So we'll talk about that like it's natural. But when I met some white Mexicans in college, I would talk about it, and they would be like, "Oh no, we don't do that." And the first time I heard that, I was like, "Oh, how come you don't need tortillas? What?" And then they said, "No, we don't do that. It's the people that the servants, they are the ones who do that." So it was the first time I heard that, it was like a shock to me, because I realized, wow. The first thing I realized, wow, we are not all Mexicans are created equal, right? And then the second thing that I realized was that, oh, they see us as their servants, right? So anyway, lots of things there, but I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, I love hearing a little bit about the cultural context that you come from, and the richness of traditions, and realizing that there is difference amongst us. I'm curious to hear a little bit more about, I know that you're a professor, you're also the founder of a danza group, and there's many different things and threads that you've been a part of that have really allowed you to hone your skills as a teacher, as a guide, and just could you just share a little bit more about those?
There's a lot of background before, but I'll try to jump to where I started, like officially in this journey. That was pretty much almost 20 years ago. And that's when after years of being a dancer, because I consider myself first and foremost a dancer, because I love to dance. But since I was a little girl, I wanted to become a danzante. So that's a traditional Mexica-Tenochca danzante. And I couldn't do it because of colonization also. But then I became a modern dancer, and so I loved. I've done lots of different type of dances. But in about 20 years ago, here in the U.S., there was a lot of uproar, as there is right now, about immigration. And I remember I attended some of the marches at that time, and and I think those of you that live here in the U.S. or at least in California, that when there are these marches, the people at the front, most of the times are danzantes. They are the ones that are wearing feathers and so on. And I see I get emotional because that's me, right? That's my people. And we have some shells in our ankles and so on, right? So when I saw that, I was, okay, this is it. I don't care about colonization. I need to be one of those danzantes. So that was a Monday. So on the next day, I approached the danzantes and I asked them, hey, where do you learn? I didn't even know the language they use, right? What we use now. So then they told me tomorrow, Tuesday at this time, and in San Francisco. So I went there, and since then I've been a danzante. So, but when I started dancing, that type of dance, again, I've already done lots of different dance styles. Even I've done also West African, which I love. But when I became a danzante, a lot of things started really making sense. I started putting one and two together. I started connecting the dots, because I've always talked to my family, to my grandparents, to my parents, to my aunties about us, about we as people, like who we are as people. I didn't know I was asking those type of questions. Right now I realize that, but I always ask them, but who are we? Because in public elementary they tell us you are mestizos, and the other people are indigenous. And for me, I thought, well, what's the difference? Because my grandparents are indigenous and I'm mestizo. I don't see any European in between us. So why is it that I am different than they are? So anyway, I always ask my family lots of questions. So when I became a danzante, all the answers that I've been getting, which maybe at first didn't make sense to me, or were like, well, yeah, that's like, okay, I got this. But I hadn't really embodied it until I became a danzante. That's when now everything started making sense. Like, oh, so we plant agaves or magueyes. Well, guess what? There's a danza for magueyes, at least one. Now I understand. And then I saw my grandfather. He taught me how to plant beans and how to plant corn. And so, I mean, in the way we have done it for thousands of years. So guess what? There's a danza for planting corn. And it's exactly the movements that my granddad did. So I was like, wow. So everything started making sense. So then, fast forward maybe 2-3 years later, I was bestowed the leadership position, a leadership position in my community. And I mean, I was shocked because it was too soon. But then that pushed me to be the guide and the teacher of a group. And then, well, I don't know if you have seen, but we wear these headsets. We call them kopillis. And the kopillis are not just flat or plain. They have some images or some symbols. So then my students at the time, they ask me, well, what does that mean? I want to have one of those headsets, but what does it mean, right? What each of those symbols means. And then I started telling them, we were in a circle as usually the way that we usually interact in a circle. So I started telling them, oh, well, it has to do with the calendar. It has to do. So I started explaining everything. And at that moment, I realized, because at first, when they asked me that question, I didn't know that I was going to be able to convey. I didn't know I was going to be able to share that with them. But when I started answering, I was like, oh, what a concept. I can convey this. I already know this. So this was all the information that I had been gathering for years and years, talking to my family, paying attention, listening, observing, asking myself lots of questions. And then when that moment came, it was like I was ready. So then I started answering. And that was really the first time. That was maybe, I don't know, again early 2000s. And then it took me still maybe about 6-7 years for me to present like professors do present, like, with a slide deck and with a microphone and so on. It took me time, but I did it. And the first time I did it at UC Berkeley, and I presented about calendars, because for us calendars are very important. So the calendar that we have right now, today is Tuesday and so on and so forth, 2025. That's Gregorian, that's European. We live in a different calendar. The way we count the time is completely different. So it's very important for us, very important for me. So that's when I started teaching. And then, because I was at UC Berkeley, there were some professors that observed. And then guess what? Some years later, they invited me to co-teach a session at Ethnic Studies. And since then, I've been invited. I've been to UC Berkeley, UC Santa Barbara, I think UC Irvine. I don't know, lots of places, which I'm very happy about. But that's what has helped me to share. So, but along with that, and it's really it's together, like we say in Spanish, va junto con pegado, or like is one and they go together. So one thing is to teach. So in our Western tradition, we see it as different. So one thing is to teach, another thing is to be a leader. In our tradition, it's pretty much, it's junto con pegado, it's intertwined. Because as I'm teaching, I'm not only teaching how to calculate your birth date based on the Nahua tradition, but I'm also teaching how we should, or how you should behave, for instance, in a circle. And it could be a danza circle, but it could be also a learning circle, but it's a Nahua circle. How we behave, how we connect to each other, how we grow as community. So again, I was bestowed that position, and so I started doing the two things. I realized that there are some leaders in my tradition that don't teach that much, and I understand, I respect that. But in my case, again, I already have tons of knowledge accumulated. So I would not even feel good holding it. Actually, I like to share. That's one of the things that I realized being a coat, a serpent. One of the qualities, characteristic of a serpent is that you share knowledge. Is that you gather knowledge and then you share knowledge. That's one of the characteristics of the coat. Maybe if I were not a coat, maybe I would not share. I don't know. But it happens. I think the way I see it is the ancestors put me in this position, right? They told me, okay, you have to do this. Well, I don't know how it was, but they made me ready so that I could do this.
Really beautiful getting to hear more about your cultural context and just these different traditions that have been passed down. And what I was kind of hearing is that you were like tapping into like things you're learning in this lifetime, but also just like legacy and ancestral lineage wisdom. And so I guess I'd love to hear just a little bit more about what kinds of traditions, rituals, rites, initiations are common or are a part of your community, and how are those alive today, or have they shifted? Just tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, thank you. That's a really beautiful question, and I hope I can answer as in the best way possible. There is well, as communities, as a community with thousands of years, as people with thousands of years of knowledge, there's obviously we have rite of passages, very important. But the first one, I would say, if we go in a chronological way, the first one would be when a baby is born. And actually, let me take a step back. It would be before, when the woman gets pregnant. That's the first one. So in the Western culture, you know that I get pregnant, I don't tell anyone, or no, I should not say, I even cover my stomach, and I don't want anyone to know, for lots of reasons, right? And they are respectable. In our tradition is, you get pregnant, the whole community needs to know. Because everything, we live based on community. We live for and by the community. We are that's a completely opposite to the Western tradition, in which it's me first, then me, and then at the end it's me, right? It's like a man for himself. I don't even know how they say it. It's completely the opposite. So when a woman gets pregnant, it's shared with everyone. And there's a reason for that. Well, actually, there's lots of reasons. Because everyone there is going to be responsible and is going to be supportive, not only of the baby, but of the couple. So everyone needs to know. So that's the first thing. And then talking about the sacred knowledge, there is a special position, or is a special role there, or we call it the Tonalpouki, is the person that reads the calendars. So then the woman, the family that is pregnant, they call la partera, or the Tlamaquitisit, so the midwife, and they also call a Tonalpouki, the Tlamaquitisit, the midwife, so that she helps, moving and so on. But they also call the calendar reader, or the priest or priestess, so to speak, so that person can guide the couple, telling them, okay, so now your baby now is going through this, and now your baby is going through this. And when the baby is born, so that the person can tell them what I just told you about my name, what I told you earlier about my name, Chicoyecoat. If my parents had known this when I was born, I can assure you that this would have saved them lots of tantrums and a lot of stuff, because I'm very different to my sisters. So when a baby is born, the Tonalpouki tells them, oh, your baby, let's say it's a coat, so the baby comes from the east or comes from the north, and it gives them all like the characteristics and potentials of the baby, so that it's like a GPS. The way I see it, like a GPS. They give them a GPS. Of course, the parents can say, no, I'm not going to go this way. That the GPS is telling me I'm going the another way. But I'm telling you what it has, right? So that would be the first one. Again, when the woman gets pregnant, then the baby is born. That's when the Tonalpouki takes place. And then the first ceremony is with water. So the baby is, let's say, offered to the water. Mm. The water is Chalchihuitlicue. It's an aspect of Mother Earth. And we offer the baby, and we tell, this is your baby, like I'm the mother, but you help me brought this baby, so this is your baby too. So please, and we are very careful with the baby. We talk to the person that is doing the ceremony talks to the baby, and prays to Chalchihuitlicue, to the Mother Water, that she protects the baby, that she helps cleans not only the body of the baby, but the heart, so that the heart is always clean and strong, so that the baby can get this characteristic of the water. The water is always running. If for some reason the water stops running, that's when it starts getting bad, right? So water always have to be running, but water sometimes can be smooth and nice, that's beautiful, right? But sometimes it's very strong, like a tsunami. So that's why we need to make offers to the water, to Chalchihuitlico, and telling her, please protect this baby. We're offering this to you. We're offering this food, these prayers. We're offering this so that you can protect this baby. So that would be the first one. Then for us, as I mentioned earlier, calendars are very important. So numbers are very important for us, and we count the time in groups of 13 years. So then the next one would be when the baby, a girl or a boy turns 13. That's a huge rite of passage, because for the girls we call them shilonen. So that's when they turn from being a little seed into a tender corn. And right now we're about to get ready for that season, and that's when the girls have their first moon. And that goes from old age, from 13 all the way to 18. And so that is telling them, okay, so right now you're no longer a little girl, now you are a young woman, and now you have these responsibilities. And in our tradition, what we do is we teach them to precisely make the tortillas by hand, to create their own dresses, to help the elders, and so on. So that's a big one. And it's the same for boys also, but in their case, we call them ocelot or jaguars. And so that's a big one. And then the next one would be 26, then the 39. 39 is for the people that are getting ready to be curanderes or healers. The 39 to 52, that's the big time to gather as much as possible, like to go to the gym a million times a day and so on, right, to get muscles. And then 52 is one of the biggest, is the biggest rite of passage, because 52 is a sacred number for us. I mean, 52 is 30 times 4 is 52. That's when the Pleiades align with Mother Earth, and that is going to happen for the whole Earth. It's going to happen in 2027. So it's going to be a big time for us. But for individuals, for human beings, that happens when we turn 52, and that's after that we can become healers. Women are extra powerful after that, and we are able to speak on behalf of our people. So those would be based on chronological, but there's, of course, we also have the rite of passage when we get married. That's a big one also, and that's very interesting because since 533 years, since the Europeans came to this land, right after they started, friars came here, right? So they started already imposing Catholic tradition. But not long ago, maybe I would say 50, maybe 40, maybe 60 years ago, people in my tradition started doing their weddings from a Nahua perspective, from a pre-Hispanic, in a pre-Hispanic way. And that got the Catholic Church, they were scared. And they started kind of doing things against us. But that was a very important moment, because for us it was, this is ours. If it's our people, it's our people that are getting married, why should we do it in a way that's not original to us, right? And it's okay. I mean, we respect that. But then people in my tradition started doing the weddings. And that's something, by the way, that I do also, and I love it. It's really beautiful. Again, it's with the vision of our ancestors and how we see the world, how we get together, and how we create new communities. So that's a big one, a big rite of passage. And I would say also chronologically, the last rite of passage is when one of us transitions to, we say to Mictlan, to I'm going to call it to the other. We transition, we died. That's a big one. And for us Nahua people, that's very important. That's really important. It's I could talk for that for hours, but it's a very important process. Not only for those that remain here, but especially for the relative that is transitioning. We need to support that relative for the first 4 days, they are supposed to still be here. They are still be here. They are still here. And then for the next 4 years, we need to support them. And we need to give them offerings so that when they have a good path, when they are going to the way to where they are going. And after 4 years, they come back. We don't say that it's a what's the name of that? Like rebirthing. It's a because they come back either as hummingbirds, or as butterflies, or as flowers. So in a lot of cases, I don't know if it has happened to anyone, but a lot of cases, we're walking, all of a sudden we see a butterfly like here, like doing for us weird things, right? Like, and it's beautiful, but for us it's like, what's going on? Well, that's your relative. Your relative is saying, hey, I'm here, I'm happy. Or also we see sometimes a hummingbird, like, oh, what is this hummingbird doing? And well, they're coming to say hi. It's a relative that came back. All the relatives that come back, and unfortunately it has not very highly commercialized, are the flowers, the red flowers that we have for winter. That I kind of don't want to say that word because, but I have to say, but they call them poinsettias. That's that's cultural appropriation, to put it nicely. What those flowers represent for us, that's the blood of a Mexica warrior that is coming back to life. So that's why, well, it's completely disrespectful that they call him poinsettia. Poinsettia, the guy, I think he was a slave owner or something like that, very racist. So, but that's another way, when our people come back. So we know when one of those flowers is blooming with those very red petals, we know that's one of our relatives coming back. So yeah, there's lots of rite of passages. Some years ago, I led another rite of passage, but that was for Tlamaquitice, a midwife. And she asked me to do the blessing of her hands. Because as a midwife, she catches, they say catch the baby, right? So she helps the baby when the baby comes. But not only that, she helps the mom, moving. So when she was about to get ready, or to let's say to get ready to start doing that, exercising that knowledge, she asked me, I need, my hands need to be blessed. Can you please bless my hands so that they do this work? And I did that ceremony for her too. So that's special for midwives. That's a ceremony that's very special for midwives. So there's several rite of passages. I mean, I just mentioned kind of the general, depending on chronological perspective.
I love getting to hear some of the storytelling and the way in which you all go about ritual, rites of passage, initiations. And I'm just curious, today there's so many kind of overlapping and kind of sharing space that different communities are having to do because we're living in this very kind of multicultural world. And how do you see, what are the ways we can bridge difference and find ways to unite people? Because this is kind of how it's going to keep being, right? But how do we honor each other's differences and celebrate them, and also find ways to unite each other?
Thank you. That's I think that's a very important question, and for all of us to reflect on. And as I was listening to your question, I was thinking about the leader of the Ohlone Lishan people here, Corina Gould, and I think she's doing an amazing job of being the host, because we are on her land. This is the land of her people, and in a very beautiful way, she has taught us how as guests we should be, because all of us, you were not born in this area, we are guests, right? And one of the things that she has always told us is that, and that's actually how the native world works, right? So when we go to a new place, that place that is not ours, we try to we look for the elders or for the leaders of that area. We give an offering to them, and we ask permission, to be on their land. And I've been in ceremonies like that also. And it's really beautiful. I would say that that's the first way that all of us, and again, non-native to this land, even if we were born here, but this is not, I mean, if we are not Ohlone Ilishan, then this is not our land, even if we were born here, right? So I would say that's the first thing that to do. And whenever we go to a new place, look for the elders, look for the stewards or the protectors of that land, offer a gift and ask for permission. That would be the first thing. But I also would say that I think the way I see it is like we are weaving, we're weaving relationships, we're weaving communities. So I would say like the first layer is given in a very sacred way by Corina Gould and her people, because they already interwove all this beautiful land, and now we are kind of on top of that, right? We're working on like on top of what they created. But I would say that the native ways, maybe because I'm native, but we always do that. That's something that my mom always taught me. Whenever you go to a visit at home, you have to bring a gift, you have to ask permission, so like it's already ingrained in us. Unfortunately, I don't see that a lot in the Western tradition, because what happened 533 years ago? They came, they didn't ask permission, they took land that is not theirs, and they say this is ours, right? And we were like, what is going on? I mean, anyway. But I would say if we put a little bit on a side or Western persona, because all of us have a Western persona. We went to school, we went to university, we work in a Western institution. Okay, we need to pay taxes. Okay, but if we put that on a side and we really go back to our roots, to how our people related to each other or relate to each other, I think that is going to give us the key. And let me tell you why, at least from my perspective, from the Nahua tradition, from the Danza Mexica, Chichimeca, Azteca tradition, that's how we do it. When we as a group go to another place and visit, we say that we are conquering their hearts. We say if another dancer or dansante asks you, oh, why are you here? Oh, I'm conquering hearts. So it's really, that's the way we speak, like I'm conquering hearts, which means that I'm here obviously in good faith, and I want to bring my heart to this place. I want to visit in a good way. I want to honor the people here and the place here. So that's why we say I'm conquering hearts, right? Because ideally after that, their hearts are going to say, oh, I like that person. I like Patricia, or I like Lotus. Oh, I feel their hearts. For us, we talk a lot in that sense. How is your heart feeling today? Instead of saying, how are you doing, Lotus? I would say, how is your heart doing today, Lotus? And not even that, I would say, how is your venerable heart doing today, Lotus? How is your venerable heart feeling today? So that is going to be very different than, I'm here, what can you tell me about this place? Like how is your venerable heart feeling today? Yeah, that would be the first door. That would open a first door for you, very important door. So now kind of going a little bit more on that. One way or another, we in my community, danza community, we have been doing that. And to the extent that now even other communities called us. For instance, what happened almost 5 years ago now in 2020, when they killed George Floyd. It was the pandemic. A lot of us, or most of us, were in our homes. We couldn't go out. You remember, it was bad. It was very traumatic. And then George Floyd was killed, and we were like, no, please, no. And then, amazingly, well, for me, I was, and I get very emotional because I was, at the same time, I was sad, I was angry, and I was full of pride, proud that the Black community called us danzantes. And then they say, we need danzantes. Where are you? And I get very emotional because everybody was scared, right? And a lot of us were angry. Yet the Black community still called us and they say, we need danzantes, so that they opened the ceremonies or the marches for us. That, I mean, I get very emotional because for me it's like, oh my God, I mean, if you think about it, it means a lot of things. It means we already opened a door with the Black community, right? Maybe we hadn't said it like, okay, we have a door open for you, right? Maybe you hadn't said it like that, but when they felt the need, they called us. If they hadn't felt that the door to our hearts was open to them, they wouldn't have said anything. But they called us. They even said, "Where are you? We need you." And we're like, "Oh my God, oh my God." So several of us danzantes unfortunately I couldn't go because in my family there is a relative with health issues, so I couldn't risk it. But several of danzantes were. And you know, again, I get emotional because it was so beautiful. That told me we already have a relationship with them. We already have and that's what we wanted. That's one of the things that we as brown indigenous people want or have been wanting, but we didn't know how to do it. Again, it was never explicit, like, okay, you can come with us whenever you need. I think we never said that. But they have seen us, danzantes, when there are hunger strikes, you know, in the marches, in the migration marches. They have seen us in a lot of other instances that when it's needed, we go. We as danzantes, we go and open up the space with ceremony, with smoke, with prayers. And then after that we leave, and then they can do whatever they need to do, right? Like, for instance, my group, I was asked to lead the May 1st ceremony for maybe 5 or 6 years in a row, up to 2019. That was the last year, and then 2020 happened, and then it changed, right? But I even led a march or a procession, which was I don't remember, it was pretty long, on May 1st. So we have been seen, and that's one way in which we are saying we can create community with you, with all of you, right? When was it? The first time that 45 won? When was it? 2016, I think. So I don't know if you remember, but in the January after, when he was taking over, there was a huge women's march. So I was not thinking, I was not planning anything. We were scared, you know, at that time we were scared. What we did as a group, because that was Tuesday, you know, elections are on Tuesday, so we practiced on Tuesday. By the time we were done with the practice, we knew, we heard, and we were all panicking. So then I told them, okay, as part of what we do as community, why don't we come and let me smudge you? So another member of my group and me, I called the danzantes and I smudged them. We smudged each other. And it was really good after that. So we gave a limpia because we were really scared. But then when that march happened, again, I wasn't planning anything. I was just scared enough to not plan anything. But then one of my danza sisters called me and say, Patricia, she called me, I think if the march was on Sunday, she called me the day before. I don't remember when the day it was, but she called me the day before and she said, Patricia, have you heard about any danza group going? And I said, no, nobody has told me anything. And she said, you know, we need to go there. This is native land. She almost like, she didn't scold me, but almost like, what are you thinking? We have to be there. So then I started calling other danzantes, and the next day we were there. It was one of the most beautiful things that happened to us because I don't know if you remember, but it was huge. It was a huge marcha. So then we gathered, all of us danzantes, then the women that carry the incense holder, I don't know if you have seen the women, but they are, by the way, in the path of the healer. They are already in the path of the healer. Some of them are full-fledged healers. Some of them are still learning. So I brought my incense holder. I lit it, and then we started walking. And of course, there were tons of women. They were not paying attention to us. But then I started singing the women's warrior song. So it's from this land, you know, like I don't know if you have heard it, but it's the one that goes like, hey, 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 yeah, oh. So I started singing. I don't know if it was, but there's no coincidence, right? But all the danzantes that came were women. The men danzantes, I don't know what happened to them. I think they joined us later or something. But at that moment, it was maybe like 15 of us danzantes, women. And all of them knew the song, so we started singing. So we started singing together. I was at the front carrying the incense holder, and another sister that had brought her incense holder. We were walking, and then something extra beautiful happened. And it's a passage that they say in the Catholic tradition where Jesus Christ walks in the water and then the water kind of goes out, right? Or in the sea, and then the sea goes side to side so that he can walk. Well, something like that happened to us. It was a sea mainly of white women, and that's what my dancer sister told me. Said Native women have to be there, otherwise this is going to be taken over by white women, and we need to be there because this is Native land. And I thought, yeah, I mean, I cannot say no to that, right? So then again, I was at the front carrying my incense holder along with the other sister, and the other sisters were behind us. I started singing. Everybody, the 15 of us, 13 of us sang together. We started walking, and then guess what? Then white women noticed us. They looked at us, and they did that. They started opening, and then they allowed us to go all the way till the front. They didn't even say any words. Nobody said any. And we sang all the way from the beginning, all the way to the start of the march, and then we stopped there and then we danced, and that was also a huge moment for us, because we are saying, what's happening here. This guy was elected. We know, and now we know even more, right, about what he's about. But we were saying, as women, as Native women, we have the right to come and walk and sing in ceremonial way, because this is ceremonial land. And I think the other thing that we were saying is, we can also have community with you, white women, and I'm glad that they listen, because they open up. I didn't even need to tell them, can you move? Nothing. I thought that we were just going to be really all the way at the back, just following. But it was them who opened up and they allow us to go in. So for me, we are also saying, we can create community. We can create community, but it has to be led by Native women in this Native land. This type of change, or these type of things. I need to do that.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing so many vivid experiences, really powerful experiences that you've had. And I know earlier you were saying that you've really been kind of chosen in this lifetime to be in this role of a leader, and specifically as a woman incarnated in this lifetime. I'm curious, you said at the end that we really need Native women to lead. And I'm just curious about your experience as a Native woman leading in this time, and what are the challenges of that, and then why is it so needed?
So I think one of the first thing I want to say is that maybe, I hope it doesn't happen to all women leaders, especially the younger ones. But in my case, I didn't even want to be a leader. Just put it like that. I was very happy being a student. I was very happy learning. As I mentioned earlier, I kept on asking questions and reading, and I really wanted to absorb. And it has taken me kind of a long time to realize that, to really embody. Now I have embodied, and I'm still in the process of embodying leadership. But for a long time, I didn't. I wanted to serve my community. Again, I wanted to share with them the knowledge that I have, that I've been accumulating, and I kept on I kept on learning. I just wanted to do that, And the reason why I say that, I hope that doesn't happen to, at least to the younger women that are leaders, because I think that the sooner you realize, the sooner you embody it, the sooner you are stronger, the sooner you are much more intentional in your efforts and everything. And I would say, I think the main, I reflected a lot as to why I didn't see myself as a leader. And I have friends and mentors that have told me, "Oh, you were obviously a leader from the beginning." I was like, was I? I mean, I didn't see myself. And I need to say this. I mean, it's not the nice thing to say, but I think it has to do with white supremacy. Because white supremacy tells us, I mean, I'm not going to go right now into tell you about the whole white supremacy thing. By the way, one of my best or most cherished sources of knowledge on white supremacy, it's La Doctora Aura Cumes. She's Maya Cachiquel. Maybe you want to Google her. She's kick-ass. And But white supremacy tells us, especially to us women, and especially women of color, that we are not, that we don't belong, we are not worth it, and so on and so forth, right? Because at the top of their world is a white cisgender man, like 45, 47, whatever the name, right? Whatever the number. If we are not, maybe we can be a man, but we are gay, then no, right? Or maybe we're a man, but we are a man of color, no. And so at the bottom of that pyramid is us women, especially Native women and Black women. So I think through, I don't know, decades and 533 years of invasion, I think I had absorbed that I'm not capable, that I should not, that, nice girls should be quiet, and so on and so forth, right? So it took me quite some time to realize that I'm a leader. I really, it took me a long time. I would say that's the first challenge. Again, I hope that doesn't happen to younger leaders, to younger women leaders, but it happened to me. And it took me quite some time, to understand and to embody the leadership. But I really have to say, I really enjoy when I'm with my group coordinating and dealing. I don't know, I would like to invite you to one of my ceremonies. The previous one, we didn't have a big one this year, but the previous one, when it was our 10th anniversary, it was maybe 100 people attended, and I'm there, telling them, of course, from the preparation, preparing the ceremony and telling the Calpulli members, this is a committee, you have, in this committee you have to do this, in this committee you have to do that, and I'm telling them, and then strategically I'm seeing. So that's a leader, right? But again, it took me quite some time to realize. So that is one, but unfortunately, along with that, we also, in our community, unfortunately, we still have a lot of machismo, male chauvinism. Again, that was learned in these 533 years of invasion, because previous to that, even if when some academics say that, no, pre-Hispanic women were submissive, no, that's not true, right? There were women warriors, there were women leaders at the highest level. And just to put it just simply, I'm not going to go into a history class, but women and men were considered equal. I mean, at the same level. There was not one of them was like less than other. Of course, they did have different responsibilities, but they were exactly at the same level. So when they say, that, women should be submissive or should go to the kitchen or whatever they say, well, I think it's very powerful that women can cook. For us, we have a very close relationship to the fire. So when you cook, you're really powerful from our perspective, right? Because we're close to the fire, and the fire is extra powerful, right? European women don't see it like that. Well, that's okay. Congratulations to them. That's their perspective. Our perspective is different. But anyway, so again, part of that white supremacy is that unfortunately our communities have learned, in the same way that I had absorbed the fact that I was not a leader, or that I was, because I'm a woman, and see, I think someone said, you're petite, and so on. Yeah, so I'm petite, my voice is not that high, and so on and so forth. Well, no, I'm just like this person, right? I think in the same sense, men in our communities have also absorbed that they are the ones that should lead, that they are the ones that should decide, that they are the deciders, unfortunately. And that's a sickness. The way I see it is a sickness. And they have the responsibility to realize that and to heal themselves. In the same way that I had the responsibility to realize that I am a leader and I need to embody that and I need to work on that. It's in the same way they have to realize about their machismo, and they have to heal it, right? We can support them, but it's their responsibility to heal that. So that's unfortunately one of the other big things, the machismo from compañeros, compañeras, from men leaders. Unfortunately, in my tradition, I've seen it several times in which, I'm in my group, I'm in my house, the way we say is in my house, and then a man leader comes and then wants to reprimand me or what do you say, mansplain in my own house. See, what I was saying earlier is when you go to other house, you respect their house, right? And you might not agree. You might say, I don't like the color. You might think, you don't say, but you might think, I don't like the color of that curtains, I think that painting should not go there. But you don't say anything, right? Because that's not your house, right? So in the same way, that's one of the rules in our tradition. When I go visit another house, even I might not agree with something, but I'm not going to say anything because that's not my house. Unless, of course, it's something that is dangerous. And so then I would tell the leader, hey, this is happening, and so on. So, I mean, there's a series of rules for us. However, those rules sometimes they are not followed when a man leader is visiting the house or the group, the organization of an organization led by a woman, a woman-led organization, right? That's one thing. That's another thing that happened. And unfortunately, when men get very scared, I think they get very scared, and then they turn into this bullying thing. And then it's us. We have to find ways, to respond, to protect ourselves, to see how we can deal with this situation. But that's unfortunately that is not easy. That is one of the challenges. I think another challenge that I've seen is that a woman, at least in the European tradition, it has to kind of mimic a man, right? Like, for instance, Margaret Thatcher. And I know that's kind of old time. Maybe the young people are going to be like, who's that, right? But I think she was the first woman, right? The first, at least in United Kingdom, that was the first one at that level. But I mean, a lot of respect to her, but she acted exactly like any bully man. She was exactly like them. I mean, what's the point of her being a woman? That there's no point. And it's even worse because she's just following literally the leadership of men, right? So then what's the point of that? And so that's another thing that sometimes I still have seen it, or I have felt it, that women leaders are expected to behave like men leaders, and that is not okay. Along with that is that one of the things in which we are supposed to raise our voice pretty loud, like, hey, I don't agree with that, so and we don't have to talk like that. I got that teaching, a very beautiful teaching. I don't know if you know the chief Kalinsisk. I don't know, have heard from Chief Kalinsisk. I would like to invite you to Google her. She is the leader of the Winneman Wintu people over at the Northern California. I think maybe at the border with Oregon. But they are the ones that they are the protectors of the salmon. So they do a salmon run, I think, every year and so on. Well, Chief Kalinsisk, and I had the opportunity to talk to her when I met her, I don't know, maybe like 15 years ago. And in her group, with her people, the leaders are women. That's why she is the chief. She is not a man, she's a chief. So, but when I met her, she was given a conversation over at the Intertribal Friendship House here in Oakland. And so I, of course, was still with this mindset of, again, we don't even realize, or I didn't realize, but I had this mindset of, when I see a woman leader, it has to be, or like Hillary Clinton, right? Like that type of women, or women leaders. And then I sat and I started listening to her. And then I was like, okay, wait, something's going on with my ears, because I cannot. And then I realized she was speaking like this, in these times, what we should do, we really have to protect each other. And I was like, at first, it really took me time to realize, oh my God, what she's saying is extra powerful. But I had to pay attention. She's not your type of leader that's going to be like, hey, we need to do. No, she was, even her voice sounded to me a little lower. That was a huge lesson to me. I realized she's extra powerful. Chief Kalinsisk is really powerful. So she doesn't need to scream. She doesn't need to raise her voice to exert that power. I was, wow. Take that, Margaret Thatcher. Take that, Hillary Clinton, and all of them. Respect to them, but I don't agree with that type of leadership. So for us, I think another challenge that will be more on our side, like on our as women leaders, is like what type of leaders do we want to be? Because we still have to a big extent, we still have the white supremacy instilled in us, we have absorbed it. So what type of leaders do we want to be? Again, my case, I like to say that my mom used to tell me when I was a little girl, she told me, you have a chicken's heart. Because, someone does something bad to me, like a friend when I was a little girl, and I would be mad, but then the friend would come and say, oh, I'm so sorry. And I would, don't worry, I love you, right? Like immediately, I would immediately turn. So that's why my mom would say, you have a chicken's heart. Like you are very easy to convince. And I want to think that is actually a strength, because that means that we can be compassionate, that I want to be compassionate, to my fellow relatives. And why is it that I want to be compassionate to my people? It's precisely because we are still, it's very difficult for us to remove the Western persona that we have, right? It's very difficult to even understand what is Western and what is really mine and what is really from my people. It's very difficult. Like, again, when I sat to hear Chief Colin Sisk, I thought, why is she not speaking louder? She needs to speak louder. Those were my thoughts, or were like, what's going on with my ears? And then I realized, oh my God, she's extra powerful. She's like kick-ass. It's me who needs to pay attention to her. Why does she need to scream, right? But again, I had imprinted that in me. So the same way, I want to think that we can be very compassionate as women leaders, and at the same time, we can be very firm. And at the same time, can be very disciplined. The other day, I was talking to my group, and this phrase came out of me. I didn't plan it, but I told them, because I was talking to them about discipline. We need to be disciplined. Why is it that our people, one of the reasons that our people have survived for 533 years is because we have been disciplined. We are not just going around jumping up and down. No, like white people get to do that. No, we cannot do that. I mean, of course, we can have fun, right? But we need to be disciplined. We want to survive, we need to be disciplined. And then I said, there, out of discipline comes beauty. The true beauty comes really out of discipline. Not because I put on, I don't know what, makeup, or I'm white. No, the true beauty comes really out of discipline. And I gave them examples of danzantes, fellow danzantes, that you see them, they're always there. They're the first ones to arrive. They're the last ones to leave. They're always supporting. You tell them to do things, and they do that. That's actually part of the leadership. One of important thing in our tradition is, let me see if I can translate it correctly, but we say it, mandar obedeciendo, which means something like a leadership by obeying, by properly obeying. So it means that I'm a leader, but I need to obey my group or my people, right? My people say, my people need this, and I'm going to support them. I'm going to support them in that. It's not what I want to do because I'm the king or I'm the queen and I don't care. No, it's what is that my people need, right? So I want to think, and the way I do it is, I see that my people need to be able to understand what is the Western side, what is our Western side, what is our white supremacy persona, and what is our true Nahua or Indigenous persona. They need that. So I'm not going to say, I'm going to build so-and-so because I'm going to build a castle for me because I'm the queen. No, I'm going to build this community so that they feel safe to come and be their true native, and to also understand that, to help them accept and be compassionate to them when they act in a white supremacistic way, but at the same time be firm and telling them this is not our way. This thing of being individualistic, that's not our way. I mean, you can be individualistic outside of here, but once you're here, you act, breathe, behave for the community. Because to the extent that we are good as community, you are going to be good. You are going to thrive. You are going to be happy. If only you are happy because you are acting individualistic, none of us are going to be happy. And then at the end, you won't be happy because you will see there's going to be dissonance, right? So, but we need to be compassionate, So I want to think that as women, at least for me, one of the challenges is how can I be compassionate in a firm way, in a disciplined way, in which I can lead them, again, to be able to discern between those two personas, white supremacistic or Western and native, but in a compassionate way. And at the same time, in a firm way. So that's another challenge for us. I think that's another one. And the way I see it, I think it's big. At least for me, it's big.
Thank you. That was really fascinating. I feel like I just got a whole masterclass on leadership from you. Thank you. This has been such a gift.